Hi everyone, I'm Pete Dalliday in the studios here at Your TV, joined by author Shayne Randall. And Shayne, thanks for coming in. We got a new book right here called the Pepper Kid. This is your pride and joy, and this is your grandfather right here.
That's right. I'm his oldest grandson, and I thought it was high time that he got the acknowledgement for his hockey career that he deserves.
All right, so tell us a little bit about him first of all, and then we'll talk a little bit about the book. But he was a member of the original Toronto professional hockey team, now known, of course, as the Maple Leafs.
That's right. He was a member. He was the captain of the first NHL team in Toronto. They were known then as the Toronto Arenas, or the Toronto Blue Shirts, who then morphed in a couple of years later into the Toronto St. Pats and then became the Maple Leafs, but one continuous franchise. They won the Stanley Cup the first year of the NHL. The NHL was formed in November of 1917 and in Montreal. And the first game was played December 19th, 1917 in Montreal, Toronto against the Montreal Wanderers. And at the same time, the other Montreal team, the Canadiens, played the Ottawa Senators in Ottawa. There were just 4 teams in the league when the league started.
All right, and now here we are all these years later, and the book has come out, and it's a read that's going to bring you way back to 100 years ago, and probably a bit before then when he got his start, playing minor hockey in Lindsay. And where does the book start off?
Well, the book really gives a little bit of his family history. His father was an orphan and immigrated to Canada. And there's a little bit of that as a
Where from?
He's from East End of London.
Okay.
And the book gives a little bit of background to that.
Yeah.
The family was started in Kingston. He was one of 13 children. He was the middle child. And the 1917-18 Stanley Cup team occurred in about the middle of his career. He was 30 years old at that point in time. He went on to play another about another 14 years. But before that, he had quite a checkered career. He started in Lindsay in 1905 for the Lindsay midget teams. And they were finalists in the OHA one year. And then in 1909, they won the whole shooting match. And that propelled him into a pro career. He started in the old Trolley League, and you'll learn about that in the book, all these old leagues. You'll learn how they came and went like tumbleweeds in the wind because they were all facing the OHA, who was an established amateur league with teams in almost every town in Ontario. Sure. And the pros had a tough time early on. But he played in the Trolley League in 1910, 1911. He played in places like Saskatoon, played in Toronto, and then he got sequestered by the Maritime Hockey League, which was an important league in those days. They were important enough to contest for the Stanley Cup 2 of their 4 years of existence. He played there for 3 seasons, then came back to Toronto and caught on with the Toronto Blue Shirts in the old NHA, which was the top league in hockey at the time. There was League Out West, which I should mention because they had some great players out there at the same time, and the 2 leagues would contest for the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
There's an interesting story in how the NHL was formed. One of the owners in the NHA was so cantankerous, his name was Eddie Livingston, that the other owners, to get rid of him, started the NHL.
Oh, okay.
So you can say that Eddie Livingston really was the protagonist that started NHL hockey. Okay. So it's a wide-ranging book, has 162 images of old hockey arenas, hockey players.
Even the Brock Street Arena's in here.
Brock Street's arena's
Downtown
in there.
Peterborough.
There's some great stories about Lindsay, Peterborough confrontations back in the day.
Yeah.
The book really goes from the wooden puck, which had 8 sides when they started, all the way through when they had no boards. They had no bench because there was no substitutes. The players played the whole game. It goes right through to the dirty 30s when the hockey really suffered some bad times again.
The nickname, the Pepper Kid, I mean, where did it come
Well,
from?
that's interesting. When he went to the Maritimes years ago, he started out in his career as a prolific scorer, and he changed his MO after he was acquitted in a famous trial in Lindsay. He was in a game where he took a guy's eye out with a stick, and he went to court, had to go to court for it. It was
Really?
a big court case in the day.
In Lindsay.
In Lindsay, and he got off, and it changed his attitude. He went then from being, a high-scoring player to a truculent, sort of mean-spirited player. And when he went to the Maritimes,
This is afterwards.
Afterwards, when he went to the Maritimes to play, he really had become a tough and vicious player.
And why do you think? Why?
Because
was he bitter? Why did it change him?
He thought that was his way to get up in pro hockey.
Oh, okay.
He said to my dad many times, I thought I could stick in hockey if I could be a real
Right.
tough guy and.
But it wasn't his nature. He was actually a pretty.
Well, off the ice, he was pretty quiet.
He was a gentleman.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyways, he played in Cape Breton,
Yeah.
and it was a mining community, and the fans adopted him, and they named him the Pepper Kid because he was
Okay.
full of pepper. When he came back to Toronto, he teamed up with Harry Cameron, a Hall of Fame defenseman, and Harry was the freewheeling type that would go down the ice and score a goal on occasion, whereas Randall would stay at home. And one of the writers said they're like salt and pepper.
Okay.
So Harry was the salt, and Randall
The
was
Pepper
the pepper, and the Pepper Kid. So that's
Now-
how the name evolved.
I know he died in the late 40s.
47,
And
1947. He was 59 years old when he died.
and you were how old?
I was 5.
You were just a kid.
Yes, I was
so
living.
Do you have any memory? Do you have,
Well, yeah, I was living.
Where was
with,
he living?
He was living on Spruce Hill Road in the East End, in the beach area in Toronto,
And you were.
and
there?
I was living with him.
Oh, okay.
My parents, my dad had come
Yeah.
back from the war late, and the family had lived while he was away in the service. We lived in Arnprior, where I was born, and we moved back to Toronto. And as my dad got established after the war, we lived at the family home
Okay.
with my grandfather for 5 or 6 months, and it was during that time, at the end of our stay, when he died.
Right.
So I knew him
So
briefly.
you have some memories.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay. And then you've always wanted to do this. The family's been pushing you to write the book, and now that it's done, and it's a gorgeous looking book. Not to mention the contents, but it's in the Toronto colors, of course.
All right. Yeah.
When you first saw it, and you see your grandfather on the cover there, and your thoughts. Like, was it pretty emotional?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was. I feel it's high time that not only somebody like Ken Randall, but some of the other old timers should get recognized because, I mean, they blazed the trail.
Yeah.
And the game back then was a lot different, but it was as exciting. People loved it. The fans were rabid. It was the winter sport. It was the, it really was enjoyed by many and loved by all. So it was a great day when I finally finished it. Took me a long time to finish
Well,
it.
there's a lot here, and a lot of research obviously went into this. So great hockey stories, but I have to, before we wrap it up, ask you about how he ended up, your grandfather, with a set of golf clubs once owned by Babe Ruth.
Well, I haven't even told you this story yet, but at the end of his career, he was picked up by the New York Americans, and he played in the first game at Madison Square Garden in 1925.
Wow.
But the entire team, they were the Hamilton Tigers the year before, and there's a long story in the book, and I can't tell you all of it here today, but the entire team lived at the hotel, which was around the corner from Madison Square Garden. The team was owned by a bootlegger, and he owned the hotel. And there were many characters habited the hotel.
No doubt.
None the least, ball players, boxers. Dempsey hung out there. Some writers, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Damon Runyon.
Just the 20s, or?
This was the mid-20s,
Wow.
the roaring 20s.
Yeah.
Babe Ruth loved the bar there, and he liked drinking with the Canadian hockey players
Okay,
because
yeah.
he said they were the only ones who could keep up with his world-class drinking. Anyways, one
And the
day...
Babe spent some time in Toronto, did he not? Did he not play ball?
Yeah, well, there's a story in there.
Yeah, okay.
He hit his first home run
In
in
Toronto,
Yeah. There's a picture of the old stadium he hit it
Okay,
in.
yeah.
Anyway, the story about the Babe was he was an avid golfer and fairly new at the game, but
Sure.
and he'd buy a new set of clubs when he felt the other ones didn't work. So one spring, the hockey season was still on, but he'd gone out and played some golf, and he had these clubs, and he came into the bar at the Forest Hotel, and he shouted out to anybody who would listen, if somebody would buy me a beer, I'll give him this set of golf clubs. So lo and behold, my grandfather bought him a beer, and he got a set of golf clubs out of it. And Beer said, if you buy me another, or Ruth said, if you buy me another beer, I'll give you my golf shoes. So that spring, when my grandfather came home back to Toronto, he brought these golf clubs and told us the story.
Oh, wow.
It was quite a deal.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Are they still in the family or long gone now?
I think they're broken.
I
They
know
were wooden shafts.
You're an avid golfer and a bit of a historian there too. But
I wished I had them.
I wish you had those for sure.
Yeah.
How can people buy the book? How can they get their hands on it? Because it would make a great Christmas gift.
Well, they can go to Amazon. It's available on Amazon. They can look me up on Facebook, and I can make sure they get a copy. I'll even sign it for them and deliver it if they want. It's also available in Kindle. If you want to read it online, very reasonably priced on Kindle. So that's basically now I'm trying to negotiate with the chapters to have them sell it,
nice,
and I think we'll probably come up with a deal. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Well, congratulations. It's a great book. I've just gone through it a bit quickly, and I'm looking forward to getting deep into it and learning more about your grandfather.
Yeah, well, anybody who reads it, they'll be a hockey expert when they're finished, at least of old-time hockey.
All right. Thank you, Shayne.
Thank you.